This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. The routine had become, routine. Check the front door, locked. The back door, locked. The side door out to the patio, locked. The dog was in for the night and already asleep in her bed. Next, for Michael, a 31-year-old father of two, was to complete his nightly bedtime checklist and peek in on his wife Samantha as she was putting their 2-year-old down for the night in her princess-themed big girl bed before finally arriving at his son's room. Jeremy was a rough-and-tumble 7-year-old who loved baseball, video games, and being a big brother. Michael always saved Jeremy's room for last because half the time he would fall asleep reading to his son. But Jeremy had his routine as well. Lights turned down, but not all the way off. Check the closet for monsters, then shut the door all the way. And then only half a glass of water so he could make it until morning before he had to pee. And he would always ask, "Are Mom and the baby okay?" He still referred to his little sister as the baby, even though she was a 2-year-old terror, running around the house and talking up a storm. Hearing Jeremy refer to her as the baby made Michael happy, and he hoped that it would continue. Then it was time to start reading. They were early in Book 4 of the Harry Potter series, The Goblet of Fire, and just as Michael was settling into his comfy chair beside his son's bed, Jeremy had a strange request. "Dad, check under the bed for monsters." Michael looked quizzically at his son. Was he serious? I mean, sure, he was smiling and he had that twinkle in his eye that told him this was purely a ceremonial request and he didn't really believe there were monsters under the bed. Maybe this was just a new addition to the pre-bedtime checklist. Michael recalled how the closet inspection came out of nowhere sometime near the end of the Sorcerer's Stone. So this was probably just a harmless way that these books were making their way into Jeremy's imagination. "Of course, buddy, stand by," said Michael. He put the book down and got out of his chair. Then he got down on all fours and lifted the Star Wars dust ruffle so he could go through the motions of checking under the bed. And then he froze solid. Lying there, clinging to an old blanket, body shivering and his face tear-streaked, was his son, Jeremy. Michael looked desperately at his terrified child, but couldn't make a sound. And Jeremy was able to utter only a horrible warning. "Dad, there's something in my bed." Welcome back to The Devil Within. You're listening to Campfire Stories, Part 2. Not sure of the origin of that one. It may have been the winner of a short screenplay contest. I'm not sure. I don't remember all of it, and I had to fill in some of the narrative parts, but the twist is still the same. And man, did this scare the crap out of my kids. Okay, this next one's been around forever and has many variations. A hybrid version of the story actually made its way into my hometown and involves a guy named Anthony D'Annunzio from back in the 1950s. If you listen to Season 1 of The Devil Within, you're familiar with the story of the phantom headlights that chased Anthony down as he drove Clinton Road on a hot summer night. The headlights appeared behind him, and despite how fast Anthony could drive that Buick of his, the lights kept gaining on him until they overtook him, passed through his car, and hovered right in front of him. Distracted, Anthony drove off the road and almost crashed. But it was while he was sitting on the side of the road, just moments after that near catastrophe, that Anthony saw a monster in the woods. Presumably, the Jersey Devil. The original version of this story concerns a young woman driving home late at night. She stops for gas, grabs a snack, and continues on her way. Suddenly, she sees, in her rearview mirror, a car rapidly approaching, honking its horn and flashing its high beams. The girl, terrified, takes out her cell phone and calls 911. The emergency operator instructs her not to stop for any reason until she gets to the safety of the police station. Another look in the rear view, and the car is still there, right on her tail. Again, the car behind her starts honking and flashing its high beams. This time, it even makes contact with her rear bumper. The woman is panicking, but the emergency operator keeps her calm enough to continue driving. All the while, the car behind her keeps honking and flashing the high beams at random intervals, and it will not stop its dangerously close pursuit. The harrowing 5-minute drive to the police station felt like hours to the terrified woman, and as she arrived in front of the station, the emergency operator had an army of officers waiting for her. And still, the vehicle was right on her tail. As the cars came to a stop, the driver of the car that had been chasing the woman jumped out and sprinted toward the woman, screaming, paying no attention to the cop standing in his way. One officer yells, "Taser, taser, taser!" Bang! As 50,000 volts paralyzed the man where he stood. With the threat averted, everyone took a breath until a different cop noticed something strange about the woman's car. There appeared to be someone in the back seat. The cop rushed to the woman's car door, opened it, and pulled her to safety just as a deranged madman rose from the back seat with a massive butcher knife and slashed wildly into the front, where just seconds before, the woman had been sitting. The man was taken into custody and arrested for attempted kidnapping and attempted murder. It was determined that the man in the car that was so aggressively following the woman had noticed the lunatic climb into the back seat of the woman's car while he was pulling into the gas station, but the woman pulled out before he could warn her. He sped up to get her attention, but all he could do was honk his horn and flash his high beams every time he saw the man raise his knife to strike. Still another version has the woman pulling into a gas station on a dark and stormy night, about to run out of gas. She's incredibly relieved to have found this run-down mom-and-pop station still open. Through the rainy darkness, she spies a man exiting the small office to assist her. As he gets closer, she sees that his face is horribly disfigured and his voice is low and gravelly. "Can I help you?" he asks through the barely cracked window. Yes, fill it up, please." The woman then passes her credit card to the man and he retreats inside. Moments later, he's back at the car, tapping on the window. "Sorry, ma'am, but there's an issue with your credit card. Would you mind coming inside to take care of it?" Incredibly reluctant but desperate to be on her way, the woman agrees, gets out of the car, and follows the man. Inside the small, dingy office, the woman notices an array of various garage items laying around: tools, oil cans, rags, and an ancient cash register. The kind that doesn't require any type of electronics to make a credit card transaction. So how would he know if there were any problems with her card? Suddenly stricken with fear, adrenaline coursing through her body, the woman manages a simple question. "What seems to be the problem with my card?" The man looks at her and replies, "Not a thing. I just needed to get you inside." Bam! The woman, having gotten a grip on a large wrench that was sitting on a nearby counter, violently swung at the man's wretched face and connected with a crunching sound that caused the man to crumble to the ground. The woman wasted no time sprinting out of the office through the rain to the safety of her car. In those frantic moments, while she disconnected the fuel hose from her car, she heard the ding-ding of the office door opening and saw the man, face bloodied from her blow with the wrench, running toward her, screaming something she couldn't understand. If only she had listened. Instead, she jumped in her car, put it in gear, and peeled out into the night. As she watched the station and the disfigured man fade away in the reflection of her rearview mirror, her vision was suddenly obscured by a strange sight. The head of an axe blocking her view of the mirror was the last thing she would ever see. Interesting. In both stories, we're obviously rooting for the woman, and her savior, or potential savior, endures physical harm in their attempts to save her. Also, that there's a moral to the story. In many of the accounts, the person trying to warn her is a bit of a brutish man, a lumberjack or a drifter, or has something physically wrong with him. In our case, the gas station attendant had a disfigured face, which gave the woman, already in a suspicious, on-edge state of mind, ample reason to see this person as a threat. It's a very, very dark way to teach the "don't judge a book by its cover" lesson. In the movie from 1998, Urban Legend, the opening teaser is a filmed adaptation of the gas station version of this story. In the movie, the attendant is crazy looking, but also, importantly, has a brutal stutter. The stutter was used rather masterfully by the filmmakers to up the tension. He simply can't get the words out to warn the young woman until it's too late. She pepper sprays him, runs back to her car, and takes off. As she speeds off in the pouring rain, the attendant is finally able to scream, "Someone's in the back seat!" The origin of this particular fable can be traced back to the early 1960s, right here in America, where an incident occurred that very closely followed the beats of this story. Not the full gas station version, just the high beam version. In that case, a convicted murderer escaped custody and hid, unfortunately for him, in the back seat of a police detective's vehicle. The detective, while driving home, was alerted to the presence of the man in the back seat by a fellow motorist. The detective stayed cool, drove home, then shot and killed the guy. So, far less dramatic, and further, it's not even clear if the bad guy had a weapon or if the detective's life was ever in danger. Then in 1982, the advice columnist Ann Landers received a letter detailing an incident corresponding exactly to the extended gas station version of the story. From there, it went viral. Well, 1980s viral, so that means it was syndicated. So instead of instantly spreading around the globe on social media, the story was shared in thousands of newspapers across the country and soon became the stuff of Campfire legend. Also, the more you tell the story, the more scared you are to look in your own backseat every time you get in the car. So, you're welcome. Thanks for listening. Make sure you're following The Devil Within wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. You can also check out our socials at The Devil Within Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, stay safe out there.